Zoom Zoom keeps changing. Like you only have 40 minutes, even if it's a free account or something. So we might have to
Okay.
restart it. They just
Okay.
keep making changes. It used to be you can talk as long as you want, as long as it's only two people. But
Interesting.
they keep, I don't know, they keep changing it.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, the leaving my father's house essay is the one that I was kind of focusing on. And I think
Yeah.
one of the things is in a lot of, I want to say like a lot of weddings I've been to, they play this John Mayer song.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, I always think of it as like this like sweet song. And I was curious when you look back at that song, what you think the message is, because I don't think I've really ever thought very deeply about that song. But you start this chapter or this essay with
Yeah.
a quote from that song Daughters from John Mayer.
Yeah. It's so that is so funny. The song, I always think, John, did you date somebody who you just like really wished their parents had been kinder to? Like, it felt like this first moment when John Mayer was probably like, whoa, men as a whole have wrecked a good group of women who like maybe had good hearts, but then they don't know how to love men now. That's the impression I get when I listen to the words. Like,
Mm-hmm.
um, it wasn't even like as a father. I was like, oh, I've heard some songs where I'm like, that's a father reflecting on what it's like for his daughter to grow up in the world. But
Mm-hmm.
this felt more like I want to be in a relationship with this woman, and I can't be because she really has been wrecked by a harmful male lens over, her story. So that was my thought of that song
Okay.
particularly.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
That,
and is that kind of where the idea came from for this essay, or was there
no,
more to it?
yeah, no, no, no. So Leaving My Father's House is a book. I'm going to blank on the author's name. It's three women who've written the book, and it's an incredible book.
Okay.
And it's entitled Leaving My Father's House. And the idea is the research on women who have the story in their cultural history is that we are passed down from our fathers to our spouses. So from our fathers to our husbands. So our bodies don't even know that. It's not even clear for us. Like, historically, a woman literally left from her father's house and was usually married off in an arranged marriage, and then got married, and that day was living probably in her father-in-law's house in a building that her new husband, had built on the back of his father's home. And there's a lot of history about, whenever you would get engaged, the husband would go and start to build the home or the room on the back of his father's house, and both fathers would have to okay that it was suitable to bring the new wife home.
Hmm.
And that custom is so interesting to me because when I'm thinking about the female body, she's literally being passed from one headship to another. Like, she's just moving spaces. And so for her to even understand her own body, she has to leave. She has to leave and cleave, so to speak, like Old
Hmm.
Testament would tell us to do in marriage. Like, she has to leave to know who she is. And I think we're running into, as far as Christian women, I think we're running into women who've never left, so they don't know who they are and what they're bringing into the next relationship. So it is a spotlight basically on the father-daughter relationship, and what does it mean to leave our father's house, in a sense, to learn who we are, because we're under a headship or a belief system. Now, maybe Western culture, present day, maybe fathers aren't even physically in their daughters' lives, or maybe there's been divorce and they aren't in the home with them. So this can look different ways, but there's still a societal system that is predominantly patriarchal. And because of that, and in the Western Christian church, and so because of that, we have this idea that women don't really have it spelled out for them, that they have to leave their father's house, that they have to leave the covering for them to then know who they are. And I think sometimes we go into marriage, we go into another relationship with with another man, and we haven't really understood what it's meant to leave our last relationship with a predominant male figure in our life, usually our father. So that's the idea of leaving our father's house, is what is that process psychologically for the female to leave her father's headship or his way of thinking, even if not from his physical home, his way of thinking and his way of telling his daughter who she is in this world. So it's unpacking that idea.
So you talk a little bit about your own father in this essay. What is that relationship? How has that changed?
Yeah. So my dad is, I mean, as far as Christian context, he would not align himself in that. And he raised me and his other two daughters, so three of us girls. He raised us to be very adventurous. We know how to do things ourselves, we know how to live off the land. He taught us to be self-sufficient. But when it came to sexuality, I think he himself had a viewpoint of women that they were less than, that they were to be submissive, that there was a sense of our sexuality was to be understood through the male lens of sexuality. And so, you know, as strong as my dad taught me to be, when it came to being in a relationship with a man in a romantic or sexual way, it was like, men want this, men want sex, they're going to see you this way. And that left me not even exploring my own understanding of sexuality, because I was just saying, oh, I need to think about how a man views sexuality. I don't need to think about how my body responds to sexuality or what my sexual health is. And so in a sense, it's been an unpacking. I'm still leaving my father's house, so to speak, even 12 years into marriage, because I'm still trying to understand my own viewpoint of sexual health, not through his lens and the way I was brought up to see it. And then not to just move over into marriage and just think about, oh, my husband's viewpoint of sexual health. I need to actually think about my own viewpoint of sexual health. But if I never leave, if I just get passed from one home or one school of thought to another, and they're both male thought systems, then I'm left going into an unhealthy dynamic with my partner, because I'm not bringing myself. I'm bringing what my father taught me. And then I'm also just trying to mirror his understanding of sexual health. I'm not bringing in myself and what my body and what God has designed me to be in a sexually healthy relationship into the relationship. So I think it's important for us as women to have an understanding of what it means to leave our father's house, so to speak. And does that make sense?
Yeah, and I think you do a good job, because you're talking about how women, a lot of times, this was eye-opening for me, and you talk about it in your first book too, the Theology of the Womb, is like how much a woman's identity in the world we live in is just the way a man understands a woman's identity, is basically their own definition is not something they find out on their own. It's just what other men think of women, which is not probably very accurate. And you have reflective questions at the end of each essay. And this question, the first one you have at the end of this essay, is, how many good men do I know in my life? And I reflect on that in my own life. But I just think, more, like, statistics show us more women go to church than men, even though there's a lot more men in positions of power and leadership, but more women go. Women are more consistent with their faith.
Yeah.
Women are probably, I'm thinking more just from my experience of being married for a short time, women are so much more connected to the other people of faith. If they're in like a small group or they have a group of friends, they talk more often. And I'm pretty fortunate that I had a lot of good men in my life, but I think that
Yes.
is pretty rare.
Yes. Yes. And I think it's not to pick on men. It's not like, boo, men are bad. And and not even to say the way they think about sexuality is bad. It is just a different perspective than the female understanding when she interprets sexual health through a female body. And so I don't want to say like, oh, having a male view is bad. It's when we only have a male view, then we're not actually having sexual health because it's not a joined experience. And so I think, like you said, I mean, even having good men around us, what was the viewpoint that we were taught? Were we taught how to listen to a female tell her experience of sexuality? Or did we just get passed down a male viewpoint? And again, not that the male viewpoint is bad, but when it's the only thing in the room, we don't actually have a co-created experience of sexual health. And when you have two different genders in making up a sexual health template, we need both voices in the room. And I think women, we have to do the work to get healthier and to use our voice and to understand our bodies and communicate that to our partners and to men, because I am more convinced that men actually do want to know what women's experience are. I think they just either don't know how to ask, or they're too intimidated, or women don't know the answer because they haven't spent their time doing their own work. And so I think men need sexually healthy women just as much as women need to be excuse me, sexually healthy. And I think I'm longing for that kind of revolution, particularly in the Christian church, is
Right.
sexual health.
Right. Have like where you go to church right now, do you feel like you are able to have a voice? Are there things churches can, or do you see churches growing or learning from the things you've been teaching and studying?
Yeah, I mean, I think that actually our teenagers are the ones who are calling our church out on their lack of sexual health. So more than I would say in my individual research, it's not invited until you have a pastor or a youth pastor calling saying, I have all these kids who are non-binary, or they're bisexual, or they're coming out, or they're talking about all this stuff. And I really think that the younger generation has the crucible of challenging the church right now, and I think the church is going to have to catch up if they want to actually help our kids understand sexual health. Because right now, just being silent on it and not really having good teaching or good research around it has really harmed, I think, a lot of marriages and a lot of sexual relationships. And then I think now kids are growing up and they're in a world where it's not taboo anymore to say whatever or to think
Mhm.
whatever. And they're seeing so much stuff that if the church doesn't start to keep up, if we don't start helping our kids um, really be wise about how to traverse sexual health and sexual development, then we're going to miss out. They're going to go other places. And so I would say, since I've just moved from Seattle to North Carolina, I would say there's definitely a different vibe in the invitation to have churches let me be a part of those conversations. I feel where it comes in is community or friends that I have whose children are struggling,
Mhm.
or counseling clients or
Mhm.
pastors or church staff whose children are struggling sexually. They are more open to, Christy, what do you know? What have you found out? And I would say, and then marriages where the sexual health in their marriage has not been good for a long time, people are more open to asking. But from the stage, not quite. Like from the pulpit, that's not been a like quick invitation
Right.
to have that talked about, which is why this book was really important for me to put out, because
Hmm.
I want to bring visible what's invisible, which is the husband or wife who's lost in a mindset that's actually really toxic for their sexual development or their sexual life. And it's happening in the bedroom, it's happening behind closed doors, and people don't know where to talk about it or who to ask for help. And I think the same thing's happening with teenagers, except they're being really bold and in a sense like they're acting out probably because they have nowhere to talk about these things. And so part of putting the book out was let me expose with my own story and things I've heard in the counseling room so that we don't have to be in secret anymore and
Hmm.
we don't have to continue these toxic ways of thinking and silencing something that should really be talked about more openly because God had a plan when
Hmm.
sex was a part of the story.
Hmm. Yeah, and since we have some kids that are similar age to each other, maybe you can end this with giving me a bunch of advice on how to teach all my kids everything.
Oh my gosh.
Since you, I'm sure, have all the answers.
Oh,
No,
oh,
so we have a boy and a girl. Our girl's a little bit older, but yeah, just advice. I wanted to just, I guess, ask you specifically what can, since we were talking about fathers, what can a father do for his daughter that's very helpful?
oh, it's such a good question. I love that. I think that because our daughter's younger, it's so hard to speak to parents, right? It's like giving
Yeah.
parental advice is terrible. Whenever you have a newborn, you're like, do not tell me what to do with my child
Right.
because it's my child. And so I think knowing your child is what's helpful. And I think a lot, I always say it is, on 100 or 1,001 minute conversations. Like we don't shy away when our kids say something like, Mom, like he was touching his penis, or the other kid's like, it felt good, or, you're just like, oh my gosh. And so instead of just like shunning it, I just start the conversation. Like, sure, is that the appropriate? Do we need to do that in private? Do we do that with other people? No, our bodies are not in charge of those things yet. So it's different, I think, the conversation with little kids. With teenagers, here's the thing, they are supposed to be exploring and building their sexual foundation right now. And that's really hard for parents. It's really scary to let our kids try to build a sexually healthy foundation in their life. And yet, what we know of the brain and what we know of trying to build um, healthy grooves in the brain around arousal is when someone can pick up a TikTok and see in 5 seconds something highly arousing and just too much for them to take in, then we're scared instead of saying, like, you really do need to go to the movies and hold hands with that person. Or, like, we really need to encourage, like, healthy steps of sexuality. And I think because it can be so crass and overwhelming in technology, we have to do the hard work to speed up our kids in actually risking in healthy ways and safe ways with other peers. And I mean, that could take forever to unpack what that actually means. But I think you as a father being engaged in conversations with your daughter of, yeah, do you find yourself attracted to anyone right now? Are boys gross right now? Or are they exciting? Did they run up to you at recess? Um, did someone, you know, were they picking on you? Because sometimes picking on you is the way a boy learns to show that he likes you, or like maybe he's practicing flirting. Like we have to start having these conversations. And if our kids are not wanting to have them with us, we need to put people in their lives that they feel comfortable around. We have best friends just up the way, and they have 4 girls, and the girls do not love talking to their mom or their dad, but they love when Aunt Christy comes because I'm not afraid to talk to them. We will watch, a fun like rom-com on Netflix, and then we'll sit and talk with popcorn until 2 a.m. about this guy. And did he, okay, he kissed you, but then he broke up with you and he just ghosted you after. And oh, did someone send a dick pic? Are you nervous about that? What would that mean when you're FaceTiming? Should you be FaceTiming? Because I get bored FaceTiming with someone after a while, like then you might be more likely to do something. And then is that really appropriate, or do you feel loved when that happens? So I'm saying all this because this is what our teenage kids are like. They're starting to have to sift through, and we have to either bring people in their lives who can talk to them about it, or we have to do the talking, because it is scary to try to raise sexually healthy kids in this world, because technology is beating us to it at every front. And so we know our kids are going to see things that are inappropriate and bigger than they should be able to see. But all we can do is have a place where they can talk about it freely. What did you see? What was that like? What did it feel like? Did it make you feel excited? Do you think about it before you go to bed? Did it make you feel grossed out? Did you feel dirty? Do you feel shame? I mean, we have to start bringing those conversations in. And I just think we stay at it because the world is not going to stop. And our poor kids need to know there's something besides just orgasm or jacking off or sending pictures that then, get exploited. Like, we have to build a stronger story for sexuality because it means something far deeper than all of that. So yeah, I don't know if I even answered your question well,
No,
but
absolutely.
it's
No, there's
a
a
big
lot of good
question.
insight in there. I've always appreciated your, work as a counselor, as a teacher, as a writer, speaker. So your website has classes and books, and you and your husband do retreats and marriage counseling, individual counseling. So I'm just going to continue to promote the really good work that I think you and Andrew are doing, and
Thank you.
good examples of parents and husbands and wives that we try to be too.
Yes.
So, and you guys
Yes.
have a fun marriage podcast that is very enjoyable to listen to.
We do. Since the move, we've really, like, every time we're about to go to bed, we're like, we should do another episode. No, we'll go to bed. So I feel like, yes, we're gonna commit to that podcast a little bit more. But yeah, it's fun to just say the things that we think everybody's thinking but not willing to say. And I think that's our goal.
Yeah. All right, I'm gonna stop it there. Have you heard? Oh wait, that's not what I want to do. I just want to end.